But I think the biggest brush with process was when I built an e-commerce store in Indonesia, because that's what you do when you're 25. And
Random.
The idea of staying in a stable job scared me more than leaving.
It took me a very long time to get my name out in the I mean, well, comparatively not long, because I've just been here for 19 months.
Well, I was going to say, you've only been here for 19 months, but not that very long. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of She's the Boss, Female Entrepreneur Stories. I hope that you have been enjoying the series so far. And if you haven't already done so, please, before you do anything else, click that subscribe button. And please share these videos if they're resonating with you. Today, I am joined by Heidi Fisher, who is the Director of Make an Impact CIC. Heidi, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Daniela. It's great to be with you.
So tell us about Make an Impact CIC. What is the business and how did you come to start it?
Okay, so the business is a community interest company, so it's a social enterprise and it helps other social enterprises, mainly to help them to grow, become more sustainable, to look at how they can develop products and services, and also to look at how they can measure their impact. How I came to start it is quite a long story.
Oh, give us a long story, that's what we're here for.
So about 12 years ago, I had an accountancy business that specialised in social enterprises, and I ran that up until 2016. At that point in time, my son was about 18 months old, and I got to the point where trying to juggle running the business and having a young son and manage a team of staff just wasn't really working practically for me. So I decided to get rid of the accountancy and start over with Make an Impact, just doing consultancy and training, because it was a lot more flexible and I could work part-time, so I could still actually be a mum. Because one of the things that's really important to me was that if I had children, that I was still able to be a mum, and that I didn't just work and never see my children.
Mm-hmm. So when you started your first accountancy business, had it been something that you'd always wanted to do, or was you already in accountancy and then quit and then said, actually, I'm going to do it on my own? What was the journey there?
So the journey there was I'd been running an accountancy practice for somebody else, and up until then I'd had a couple of, I suppose, bad experiences with being an employee, and this was my third attempt at being an employee, and it didn't end well. And I also was, I suppose, going through a phase where I was starting to realise that actually making money for people that could afford to pay tax didn't really sit that comfortably with me, and doing accountancy in that way, where actually it's about how much tax can you save people that can really afford to pay it anyway, because they've got millions of pounds, was quite uncomfortable in terms of the values that was bringing up. And so I decided that at that point in time that it would be perhaps an idea to use those skills that I had around accountancy and put that together with working with more value-driven businesses, so with social enterprises and charities that were really actually doing something that was positive for the world.
And how big of a decision was it?
At that time, it just seemed like it made sense. It didn't seem like a huge decision. I think I was lucky in that I had some finances that I could sort of depend on for a few months in order to get the business up and running, whereas if you don't have that, then it's a much bigger decision, because you've got to either make a jump and go straight into something, or you've got to do it much more slowly, and I was able to sort of transition into the accountancy business, knowing that I had that support of that money there in order to pay bills and different things. And so I suppose I was luckier than a lot of entrepreneurs.
And a lot of the time in kind of the entrepreneurship space, there's this discussion around having inherent entrepreneurial qualities and traits, and as a young child knowing that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Was that you, or was that not you?
Not really, no. I was more interested in trying to read tarot cards and understand horoscopes as a young child.
Random.
Predict the future a little bit, but I think where it came in was more with when I was employed by people, I was always coming up with ideas and trying to improve things and change things, and that there was actually quite a resistance to that. Although employers will say they want people to make the workplace better and make suggestions for improving things, in reality they don't really want that kind of person. They want someone that will come in, do what they're asked to do, and go home, work over if they need to, and all those kind of things. And it's actually quite restrictive for someone like me that has a lot of ideas.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when you started the first business, obviously you didn't have kids. When you started the second business, you have. What has been the difference between starting a business as a single person and starting a business as a mom?
So starting it as a single person was obviously a lot easier. I could get to all the networking events that were in the mornings and the evenings. I could stay out to whatever time at night, networking, different things, travel wherever the work was, and everything is much more easily. With kids, it's much more difficult in that respect. There's a lot more juggling, trying to manage childcare and also do the work. But I think the one thing that having my two children now is that actually there's a bigger passion and commitment to do it, because I see that actually my children are looking at me and watching what I'm doing, and having two little people that you don't want to let down, and for them to, I suppose, think that mummy's not doing anything, or mummy's not following her dreams and doing things that she's passionate about, for me would be like probably the worst thing. It would be worse than not working and having a business. And I always say to both of them, even though Alicia's too little, she's only one, so she can't really actually answer me back, but I always say, please always follow your dreams and do the things that make you happy. Don't ever get stuck doing something that will make you miserable. And you probably think, well, that's a bit of a crazy conversation to be having with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, but actually for me, I think because I've done things in the past where I have been miserable and not happy with what I'm doing, I see that actually you can waste a lot of your years in your life doing things that don't make you happy. So for them to see that I'm actually happy in doing the work that I love, but I can also be a good mum to them, is really, really important. And that actually drives me to do more in the business than I think when I was just running it without any children. It became more of a just something to do, and although I was passionate about the organisations and the work that I was doing, it didn't have that same depth of meaning.
Do you, and I totally agree with you about this conversation about following your dreams and stuff, and I don't think one is too early at all, because I come across people all the time that are in jobs and in situations that are making them really unhappy. Somebody put something, and I've heard it before, but somebody put a phrase the other day about if you're unhappy where you are, then move. You're not a tree. Yeah. And I thought that's it's such a good way of putting it. It's true. You're not a tree. You're not planted in one position. You can make a change, and I'm a big proponent of that. So I think kids from a very young age do need to have that implanted in their brain, because there's obviously a lot of people out there that haven't had that message drilled into them, which is why they're staying in situations, whether that be work, whether that be relationship, whether that even be family wise, that they're just unhappy with and feel like they can't do anything about it. I'm obviously also a mom and trying to run a business, and I'm also a contractor. Do you feel, because I sometimes feel as though people expect you to not be able to juggle because you're a parent? Like, do you ever feel that at times you have something to prove?
Sometimes I think there's this expectation you're either brilliant at your job and you're a terrible mum, or you're superwoman, and you can do everything. And when people say like, oh, you're superwoman, how do you fit all this in? I'm like, well, actually I've got a team of people that are doing things. You know, you might visibly see me, but actually there's people behind the scenes that are doing a hell of a lot of stuff. So I think that there is this myth that you're either completely incapable because you're a mum and you've got mummy brain and all this other nonsense, and it's like, well, actually, what is that mummy brain thing that people talk about? I don't think I ever experienced that, and
I have.
yeah, but it's like, actually some of the people that don't have children have got worse mummy brain.
Yeah, I think I probably had it before I was a mummy as well.
Yeah. Why are we so obsessed with what mums are doing? And if they work or they don't work, if they're running a business, if they're employee, if their kids go to nursery, if their kids are looked after by their family, by their dad, whoever, it's like it's never right. There's always a criticism about whatever you're doing, and I have to, for my own sanity, just rise above that and ignore a lot of that stuff that I see out there on social media and in the news and different things, because I think otherwise you can get really hung up about, am I doing it right? And as you know, there's no right way to raise a child.
Yeah.
People will say there is, but actually no two children are identical, so they don't need to be raised in the same way. So I look at it that actually I'm a better mum because I do my work, and therefore that's my choice, and I'm not prepared to negotiate and discuss that with people to any great extent, which may seem like, well, that's a bit harsh, but actually, are we going out and saying to men that have children, what are you doing? Why aren't you at home looking after your children? How come you're not expected to pick the kids up from school at 3:15? We never ask men, oh, is it convenient to meet at this time, or have you got to pick the kids up? But yeah, that's a natural conversation and a natural thing to ask women, as if it's assumed that it's just women that have children. It takes two to make a child.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't appreciate and understand that, actually.
Yeah, and I could probably talk about that kind of stuff for a long while, because I do think it blocks a lot of women from even starting that journey into setting up a business and keep maintaining it, because they've got people saying, oh, you should be doing this, you should be looking after your kids, you should be doing that. And it's like, well, if we all followed the should be's in life, we'd be doing the things that are making us miserable, which is what we're trying to avoid by setting up our business in the first place.
Yeah, but also I think one of the things that is always missing from that conversation is it financially viable? And actually, if you're not going to substitute my income, then it's none of your business. Because actually, you don't. If I stay at home, then I'm potentially going to take a big pay cut. Therefore, if you're not going to give me the money back, it's just not your business. But no, I definitely relate. When I put my daughter in nursery last year, she was just about to turn 3, and I got a lot of criticism. These are the golden years. You're going to miss them. What was the point having a child if you're going to just let the nursery raise her? Blah blah blah. And I'm just like, well, for a start, she's miserable at home. She wants to play with children. She doesn't want to play with me. I'm not her age. She's not interested. And secondly, I'm miserable because I'm trying to do things and I can't because she's there. And then I feel guilty because I'm on the laptop and she wants to play and I don't really want to play. So I think, yeah, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of negative talk, and it definitely, I've met women who want to start businesses but feel that they would be judged and therefore haven't. But I also think there's also this kind of thread of discussion about having a child and running a business, it's easy, anyone can do it and it's amazing, and there's not necessarily any of the conversation around the challenges and the difficulties, which I firsthand, and I'm sure you must also be able to relate to, have experienced. When your child is sick, for example, the business has to stop, or whatever you're doing for the most part, unless obviously you've got great help that can assist you. But even then you feel bad because your child is with somebody else and they're sick and they want mummy. So I think there needs to be a balance. So it can be done, but don't ignore the fact that it is going to be difficult.
Yeah. What I found is people that do have the children and are running the big businesses and like the high flying women have actually got a full-time nanny, or their parents have the children full-time. The dad is doing the pickups and drop-offs for nursery and school and all these things, and actually they're kind of the main breadwinner in the family, the woman is, and their work is seen as more important than the man. So often that's how it's actually done, but you don't know that the story behind it and why it looks so incredibly easy. But all I would say is it's definitely easier if you've got two parents than and also if you've got your family around you, than being a single parent, or not having the support of a family or lots of friends and people that can help out on occasion, because you do have to be very, very flexible. And there is a lot of, when people will say to me, can I pop down to Bristol? And I'm like, well, popping to Bristol doesn't really work from where I live. It's like it's 4 or 5 hours to get there. Then it's like, well, I couldn't physically do that in one working day, be there for a meeting or an event and then still get back. So actually the question is not just about yes or no, can I go to a meeting? It's actually then, well, can I organise all the childcare and all the other things around that in order to make that happen? So there's all this stuff that's behind the scenes that people don't see. They just think you literally get on a train and you turn up somewhere. It doesn't matter that you started at 5:30 getting the kids ready, feeding them, getting them dressed, getting yourself organised, and, or probably even the night before packing all the bags and things.
It's like 2 full-time jobs is what I always say.
Definitely.
So going back to the business, a question that I try to ask everyone I interview, because I just find it interesting, is how did you acquire your first client? And that can be for either business or both.
For the first business, I did some leaflets, old school. I don't think many people do actual leaflets anymore, and I took them to, I think I went to a networking event and I handed out some leaflets. Really, I feel like it's really old school now saying I handed out leaflets. I don't even have leaflets now. From that, someone said, about, I think it's about 3 or 4 days later, I had a phone call from somebody saying, oh, we've got one of your leaflets, we'd be interested in talking to you about having some help. And that's how it started. For the new business, so for Make an Impact, that actually came from a referral from somebody I knew, recommended me for a bit of work. It was slightly easier in that I'd obviously developed my reputation over the previous 10 years, so it wasn't like completely starting from scratch. Similar to you in that people knew who you were before you started doing the consultancy, so you didn't have to completely start from scratch. So it just came from a referral, and most of the work now is from referrals, although I am doing some direct marketing campaigns at the moment. So again, a bit old school, avoiding email campaigns and things and stuff like that. But just recognizing that actually doing a bit of direct marketing and physically posting something to somebody is a bit of a shock these days.
Yeah, I say this to my clients. Social media and emails, great, it's one thing and that works for certain people, but actually sometimes getting something in the post, because it's not the usual thing anymore, that can be much more eye-catching and elicit a quicker response sometimes than if you send emails, because you get millions of emails every year. So get something in the post, I don't think it's old school. I think sometimes going old school is new school.
Yeah, I think it probably is, because people have forgotten about it in a lot of research. People think, oh, I'll send out marketing emails, and you know, I look at my email at the end of the day, and sometimes I've got like 20 or 30 just marketing junk in there, really, and it's like, realistically, I'm probably not going to read more than perhaps one or two of them in there.
I don't even read that amount. A lot of the time I just press delete and can continue, which is why I really believe in the power of direct mail, because I'm a person that doesn't really respond to emails unless it's personalized and I know who it's coming from. Another question I had, in terms of challenges, what would you say has been the greatest challenges that or what have been the greatest challenges that you've faced in starting both businesses?
I think with any business, and particularly for me, it's the uncertainty. You don't know whether it's going to work or not, and for me that's a huge challenge, and also it's have the confidence as well, because once you put yourself out there as doing something, it's then, you know, how do people perceive that, and actually, although you might look like you're confident and competent, and you are, in a lot of cases it's like, well, how are people going to react to that, and can you make it work? The sleepless night kind of questions that come up about, am I doing the right thing? Is this going to work? Is it going to provide an income? And I think particularly with making impact, that was even more of a bigger question, with having then my son and now two of them. It's like, this has to work financially. How do I do that? How do I get clients? All the typical questions, I think, that you often just think, well, you're either in the ballpark of thinking, or I'll just start and there'll be loads of clients and it will all work out, or there's the other end of the spectrum where you then think, I haven't got any clients, how am I going to make this work? And it's juggling those two different viewpoints in your mind so that you don't go insane. Yeah.
A lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, sometimes doubt. And I think sometimes, and I really want to drive this point home for those that are watching, because I think sometimes if you're on the outside looking in and thinking, I want to start a business, and look at all these people, they've started and they've got all these clients and it's amazing and it looks so smooth sailing for them. But actually, for a lot of us, it was scary. We have been scared about the uncertainty. We may have had struggles with finding clients, but it's like what they say about social media. Social media is really just demonstrates the highlights of somebody's life or business. You're not going to put the bad bits necessarily out there, because why would you? You're not trying to advertise, I'm so scared. But that doesn't mean that even the most successful entrepreneur isn't. So just a quick story. I've been speaking to a lot of my clients about how beneficial public speaking is for your promoting your brand or whatever. And a lot of them, not a lot, but some of them have been really scared. And they're saying, oh, yeah, but when you see other people speaking, they just look so calm and confident. And one of the key things I always remember hearing is Beyonce says before she gets on stage, she still gets nervous. And actually, that's always been something that I share with my clients, and even with myself. If Beyonce, who is kind of heralded as one of the most amazing performers that's ever lived, she still gets nervous, then why do you think that you wouldn't still get nervous? And I think the same applies in business. Just because somebody may be running a successful or seemingly successful business doesn't mean that they don't have the same fears, challenges that you may have starting out. So I think that you really encapsulated all of that really quite well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even now when I send a proposal to a client, just as I send it, you get that funny sensation in your stomach, and you kind of, I need to breathe. And then you press send, and you're like, oh my God, it's gone. Is it going to be all right? And then like you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and like, oh my God, I should have added that in. I forgot to put that in. And then if you're going for a meeting or like an interview for a piece of work, it's still like, oh God, please don't ask me anything that I don't know the answer to. It's still there, even if you're really confident in what you do and you've got lots of knowledge. You can always feel that, and I you're right, I still feel that, but I kind of have to say to myself, come on, pull yourself together. You know enough to get through this, and that comes through just kind of continually doing it. Whereas when I first started, I was always like, I'm not really sure that I do know enough, because I was very new at it, and there's a very different relationship from working for somebody and knowing that ultimately they will take responsibility if something goes wrong, and knowing that ultimately if anything goes wrong, the responsibility sits with you and you've got to sort it out. You can't delegate that responsibility to anyone else, because you are top of, you're the top of it, and even if you've got staff or people working underneath and supporting you, you are ultimately the one that's got to sort out whatever's happened. And that requires a different kind of mindset in terms of, you have to have some self-belief that you can do these things. And so if you don't, then that's probably where your biggest struggle is going to be, just in terms of believing that you have that ability and you know what you're doing in terms of whatever product or service you're selling, that you can do that competently. And for me, that's always been the hardest thing to do to start with. But once that's in place, then everything else kind of flows from that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you're also an author. You share, how did that come about? Let us know the title of your book and why we should buy it.
So the book came about not long after, my son was about a year old, and I was repeatedly asked very similar questions by lots of people. And actually the book became literally a brain dump. So it's a brain dump around social enterprise, how to set up and run a social enterprise, and why you should buy it. Well, if you don't want to pay consultancy fees to me, buy the book, because it's way cheaper, and it will give you a lot of information about how to set up a social enterprise and kind of a lot of the core stuff around it. And there's also some stuff around tax and VAT thrown in there, because everyone needs to know about that, despite wanting to ignore that.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things I wanted to speak to you about. Obviously, you have an accountancy background, and then you've gone into consultancy with businesses. I have found that a lot of my clients, even those with really quite established businesses, don't seem to have any sort of understanding or processes around finance. Have you found the same thing? And what advice could you give? Because I can say it, but I'm coming from a non-finance background, whereas you're coming from a finance background. So for those watching, this is the most important bit that you need to listen to: the importance of managing your money effectively.
Look at your numbers. Definitely get the systems and processes in place while you're small, when you first start up, because it makes life easier once you've grown. Trying to do it retrospectively is much harder. I have to confess, although my background is as an accountant, I don't actually really like doing my own accountancy, purely because I think it's something that I just think, well, actually, I can kind of do this anytime. So quite often I don't really do that much with it. But one of the things that I always do is I always have a budget and targets for the year, because it helps to focus my mind, and I always break that right down into, well, is that money coming from consultancy, training, mentoring? How's that broken down? What kind of types of organisations? So is it health and social care, employment, education and training organisations? So quite a detailed breakdown. So then I can look at it and understand exactly how many new clients I need to engage every month in order to hit that target. But that for me is the main benefit from doing that. But I suppose as a startup business, the key thing to do is to keep all the receipts and keep some kind of records of what you're spending, particularly if you're spending your own money and you want to have that reimbursed by the business. It's vital, and just keep on top of things with revenue and customs. Pay your tax when you're supposed to. Check about VAT if you're going to be VAT registered or you're near the VAT threshold, because that's probably the main area where people go wrong, and they then end up with huge penalties and fines. But I would just say, get QuickBooks, get Xero, some of the other online systems, get one of them and get it set up now while you have a little bit of time at the early stages, and then you'll be sorted by the time you're bigger and you don't really have time to do a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I second that. And also making sure that you do cash flow forecasts. This is where I've seen a lot of businesses fall down. They start generating lots of sales and then they think, oh, it's great, but then they're not able, they get paid, I don't know, on 30 days, 60 day, 90-day invoices, and then end up in a situation where they have to deliver and pay for the delivery, but they're not getting the money back in, and then all hell breaks loose. So making sure that you have cash flow forecasts.
Yeah, because you can be profitable but have zero in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people really, well, not a lot of people I've spoken to grasp that until it's too late. So that's something. Yeah. So finally, so we kind of you did just give a piece of advice there, but for someone who's watching, who's thinking, I want to start a business, but I'm not sure that I've got the skills, or I've got children and it might be too difficult, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them?
I've probably got more than 3.
However many you choose.
I'm a bit greedy, but if it's something that you really want to do, then follow your dreams. I think that's where we kind of started with that. But definitely follow your dreams. Don't if someone is saying to you, no, you shouldn't do that or you can't do that, I've always considered that no to mean no, I can't do it with that person. Mm-hmm. Or no, that person's not going to support me to do this. I need to find somebody else that will, so that I can still do this. But I also think that's partly my stubborn streak and my independence, in that telling me no just makes me want to do it more. So a terrible child. But I just think you've got to get used to and accept the no's that will come in the early stages, because not everybody is going to be with you on your journey. And the people that are perhaps your friends and your family and that you consider love and support you very dearly are not necessarily going to love and support you when you want to set up your own business. Mm-hmm. And that can be a hard truth and reality to face, that actually your friends are telling you that you're crazy, and your parents are saying, well, why would you give up a job where you've got a regular income to do this where it's uncertain? Are you mad? What about your kids? Whatever. So you've got to have a tough enough or a thick enough skin, so to speak, to let that stuff bounce off you and carry on still. The other bit of advice is really about building relationships with people. People buy from people that they like. I know it sounds stupid. You know, it is the truth though. People want to. They talk about it in marketing terms: the know, like, and trust. People want to know you, they want to like you, and they want to trust you in order to buy from you. And that's what you've got to create at the very beginning, that people actually know that you exist, and they start to like you and want to work with you and buy from you. So the more that you can focus on building relationships with people, the better. And I suppose the third bit of advice, which we touched on around the finances, is really do some numbers. Set yourself a goal, a target for how much income you want to generate this month, and work out how you can make that happen, and then move it forward to a quarter and a year and so on. You know, don't just say, well, I want to make $500,000 this year. Break it down to what does that mean that you need to do this week, and just focus on what you've got to do this week, rather than I always say, you know, you're at the bottom of the stairs. You've only got to see the next step. You haven't got to see the top step at the top of the stairs. And if you're looking at the top step and asking yourself lots of questions, how am I going to do that? It's impossible. I don't know. What should I do? Then actually you're up too high in terms of your steps. You need to pull yourself right back to what's the next one thing that I need to do to make this happen. And by taking that kind of logical approach, you'll soon find that actually you're at the top of the stairs.
I like that. I like that as a way of looking at an analogy. That's useful indeed. If people want to find out more about you, about your business, about your book, where can they go to find that information?
So on the website, which is makeanimpactcic.co.uk, there's more information on there, and there's the links to the book, Facebook group and other stuff. So people are very welcome to connect with me, or just hook up with me on LinkedIn, which is the place to be.
Yeah, one of my favourite social platforms, if I'm honest.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated it, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And if you watching have enjoyed the conversation, please make sure that you write a comment in the comment section. Please make sure that you click that like button, and please make sure that you share it with other people in your network that you think may be interested. If you are a woman in business and you're interested in being interviewed for the She's the Boss Female Entrepreneur Stories series, please drop me an email at daniela@shesthebossinternational.com, or send me an inbox message on one of my various social media channels. And thank you very much for watching. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.